Welcome to Milk Market Tidbit for the July federal milk marketing data that USDA released this week. And it usually takes us until at least after the 14th to get the final couple federal orders. So that's why I'm recording this on Thursday, August 15th. So here's the big overview. Statistical uniform prices were up about 27 cents, and they averaged 21.26 when you wait for the number of cows in each pool. There's still significant class 4 depooling that may change here a little bit in the future. Pooled class 1 and class 2 were up. Schools are starting to go back into session now, so class 1 is up a little bit. And 3 and 4 were actually down a little bit. So overall, I'm going to say that milk production was flat month over month on a daily basis. And then fat production and protein are down just a little bit seasonally. So here are statistical uniform prices. Everybody's in that 20 or higher. The highest numbers are here in the southeast, and the lowest numbers would be those that are very high class 3. What's more important is how they changed month over month. Again, that's going to be dictated by the amount of depooling and the different class prices. So class 1 was up $1.03. That's why down here in the southeast, which is a very high class 1 utilization, they're up close to $1. While we look at Minnesota, Wisconsin, they were down a little bit, but they're predominantly class 3, which was down 8 cents. But basically everybody was in that 25 cents plus or minus 10 cents other than those two areas. So here is the graph of class 3 and class 4 as of yesterday closes. So we may get into a period here that there won't be any depooling, but once we get out into 2025, there's significant depooling again when there's more than a 75-cent difference. One of the things I like to look at is the change in daily production. We know overall, ignoring everything, production was basically flat, up 0.15%. And there's a big swath through the center here that was all up a little bit more than 1%. Now we've got the southeast coming down, and that's very typical. July, August is the biggest heat down there, and that's where that comes down. One of the surprising one is Arizona, but that milk might be flowing into Texas federal order there. So if we ignore class 4, we were up about 2%. We ignore class 3, we're up about 1%. So overall, I think we're going to be pretty flat month over month. So always got to worry about depooling. There are just a couple areas at more than 5%. This Georgia federal order, Southeast federal order, they went from about a 15% class 4 to down to about a 2%. That's why they're down quite a bit. Arizona was down about 6%. This is the graph of pounds in each category. And so we've really got to kind of sort through, what do we think is going to happen, relative to the USDA numbers. Now, historically, we're down a fair amount in July on USDA numbers. But if you remember what actually happened, we took that hit in June. And so now for July, I expect it to be more level. And we kind of see that, across a lot of these different classes that were level. So here's my guess is we're going to be even month over month, which is going to give us a production of about 19.4 billion pounds. Now, if we look at that on a year over year basis, that's a 2% increase. So that's a fairly sizable increase. But again, I think we're kind of coming off of some lower values last year. So I don't think that will be quite as bearish as it seems. But I'm on a hedge and give myself, plus or minus 0.5%. So anywhere from 99.5 up to 100.5 is my best guess. If we look at the pounds of class 4 heavy depooling, compared to our high at 138 million pounds, did that back here in 2020 sometime, we're off 110 million pounds. So right now we're about 23% of that capacity. And that's been reasonably flat through most of 2024. Class 3 was down just about 4% off of the peak, and we hit the peak back here. So that tells me a couple things. Number one, we've not brought on new cheese plants, because if we had brought on new cheese plants, we'd see these kind of rises that we saw before. And so until we, kind of move this capacity up a little bit, that we're not on new cheese plants, we're only off about 4 million pounds compared to the complete capacity here. Class 1 utilization was up a little bit. It was like 24 and change last month. It's 25, and that's schools are starting back in session, particularly in the southeast. Very heavy Class 1 in the three orders in the southeast. Very little in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and you cannot depool Class 1, and so that is not impacted at all by depuoling. Fat values declined a little bit last month. I think we're 4.08, so they came down about 3 ticks. Strong in the northwest, a little bit weaker in the southeast, and everybody else was, 4 plus or minus a few ticks. Protein values are all still above 3. The lowest is the northeast at 308, but the highest, as usual, is the northwest at 330. But some very strong numbers: 316 Minnesota, Wisconsin, order 33, 314, 322 down here in Texas. So some very strong protein numbers, but it hasn't had any big incentive to feed for protein. So we haven't seen these rocket up like we have fat. So this week, most of the reports are done. We did have the National Dairy Sales Report on Wednesday. Now, next week is going to be the big week because we're going to have a global dairy trade on Tuesday, a milk production report on Wednesday, and a cold storage report on Friday. Now, if you haven't seen the market today, we're limit up. The spot market has been going up. The futures have not been following, but they decided to try to play catch up today. So we're limit up in prices today. All right, that's it for me, and I'll get you another report with the milk production report next week.